Mm.
All right, it's 5:31. We're going to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. You are currently attending the Business Sustainability Collaborative's Career Speaker Series. We host alumni from NC State that are currently working in various fields of sustainability to share a little bit about their career journey and how they have been able to build a career within sustainability. Today, we have two really exciting guests that are joining us today. And so thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. The conversation will be facilitated by our BSC associate, Eric Mildy. So I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Mildy, and today we're going to be talking and spending some time with co-founders of Rhody Architectural, Kevin Diebler and Eric Robinson, and we'll be talking a little bit about their career history and sort of the steps that led them from a start at NC State to their roles now. Just for those of you that are new to the Career Speaker Series, and as just a little bit of housekeeping, I'd ask that if you could keep yourselves muted until the Q&A section towards the end of the call. And in general, we'll spend some time going over some introductions, our speakers' career paths, their job title, their role, the company they currently serve in, a little bit about their educational history, and then as well as what sustainability might look like at the company that they work at, and then spend the majority of the time on Q&A, so question and answer, and then open the floor towards the last 10 to 15 minutes of the call for all of you to participate. That can vary on how comfortable you are. You can either feel free to speak up and unmute yourselves and just ask the question right off the rip, or put it into the chat, and we'll try to work through them as quickly as we can. But without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to our speakers. And Kevin and Eric, if you just feel free to tell us a little bit about yourselves, what it is you do, and maybe expand a little bit on the company.
Sure. You want to go?
You can go.
Okay. I'm going to start. I'm Kevin Diebler, and with Eric, who I met in our freshman year at NC State, Design Fundamentals Studio in 1990. We have gone on to move to Boston and start a firm roughly 20 years ago called Rhody Architects. So we're both principals and co-founders of that business. And I don't know, I think I just introduced you.
That was good. I'm happy to hear that. That's fine. You did a great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other than that, I think that our goal today is really try to answer a few of Eric and Rachel's questions that we've sort of prepared, how to approach some of the content that your group is interested in, specifically starting businesses that have to do with sustainability and how to just exist in that environment. So as far as the company, maybe Eric, you want to talk
Sure.
about who we are and what we do?
Sure. So as Kevin mentioned, we've known each other for a long time. We both ended up in Boston at sort of different paths, which we might cover. And, when we were in Boston, we did not work together in Boston. We were friends, but we didn't have a professional relationship. And we had both sort of had careers at different companies, doing all kinds of work all over the country and doing different sort of design work, architects, both of us. And it really became a bit of a question as we were at a tipping point at our careers and our individual firms. What if we give it a go and try to start a firm ourselves? And so, I think we both naturally have sort of the entrepreneurial spirit to try and do something different and think differently and sort of stand by that. And that was really kind of the basis of the firm, where we were done professionally at our places. We liked each other personally. And we said, hey, let's try to build something a little bit different and create a place that can think differently about the work that we do, design work, and then also create a culture that's something that was different from where we came from in terms of our professional culture. So a lot of that was, there's a lot more to it, but that is kind of the basis of where we started and how we started.
One thing that I know is important at the core of the BSC there is just sustainability at our company. And that is really, to be honest, stems from our studies at the design school, where we were taught in a way to design in a way that fits the environment that we are gifted with, and sort of being alive and being in the world. We learned about solar pathways. We learned about prevailing winds. We learned about temperature and thermal comfort issues, the kind of engineering a little bit behind making spaces work. But we did it in a very passive way. It was all about trying to work with the environment, not try to overcome it with technology necessarily. And I would say that in architecture, for quite a long time, the last 10, 15, 20 years, before, I guess, climate change became controversial, there was a real commitment in the profession to be more, sensitive to climate change and to what is happening in the world. And so it's really sort of broadened in a way, but it also created quite a lot of noise in terms of things that other firms trying to follow, or there were certain leaders in the area of sustainability, and then you'd get a clump of people kind of following something, and we would call it, eco bling, like these buildings with solar panels all over them, and like you walk up to it and see it. But like, I think as the kind of like maybe designers that we are, we know that building performance is something that's like much less about things you add on and tack on to the building. So I think we're kind of patient about how we defined sustainability at the firm, and some opportunities presented themselves for us to sort of experiment and try to do, especially housing, work on housing things that could sort of become prototypes for construction. And so we have been able to use some methods of building that we were the first to try in the city of Boston, called the Passive House certification path. So that's a little bit of like on the banner of some of the things that we've done and gotten some recognition for. But I think really where that came from was the spirit of exploration and experimentation, and kind of crossing over disciplines and understanding that science is a big part of making spaces work. So the idea of modeling and sort of being really smart about design before everyone shows up with the materials on the construction site and say, okay, let's make this building. We have the ability, we have the tools now in society to really advance the kinds of buildings we do just simply by using the right tools at the outset. So maybe a long answer to the sustainability at our company, but we've also found that by pushing on that, it really kind of like makes us a place where people can live out their ideals in their firm, and being able to recruit the kind of people that we want. We think have attracted a lot of great people to our team who are kind of adding to this mix. So
I'll maybe jump in and just I think a little sort of adder on that is, when we were at State, it was definitely, we have environmental design and architecture degrees, which at the time, we're not that old, but back then it was sort of like a little bit of a foreign concept. And, I think we believed in that sort of the ideals that Kevin mentioned behind that. And I think one of the things that we're in Massachusetts, which is, a very forward looking state from a sustainability perspective. And I think what we saw early on in some of those projects that Kevin mentioned was, we had some clients that were willing to step a little bit into that realm of sustainability and but it was almost like a weird marketing kind of approach, like, hey, I'm going to do a building that is more sustainable to attract a certain amount of, residents or whoever it was. And it felt like it was a little bit more of a kitschy marketing aspect of it. And we were in lockstep with that because we believed in it, and those were great opportunities. But I think what we've seen since that time is really the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has elevated the floor of the building code and the sustainability code to really mandate that this is happening on all of our projects now moving forward. And it's really not an elective. We are designing buildings that are high performance in their nature throughout. And so I think it's for us, it's a great moment to work in a state that really does push environmental consciousness and sort of thinking about all the things that we have to think about. And it helps us as designers when our clients are, I'll say, forced to do those things, so we actually can realize the results of that in terms of through the design process. But so it's kind of this really interesting kind of balance of a theoretical aspect in terms of aspiring to be more sustainable, but actually we're not theoretical architects. We're a firm that wants to build stuff and get things going and operating. And so that's really helped us to realize some of those even early theoretical learning things at NC State about how to think about buildings and projects. And then now we get to build them, and it's not necessarily the case throughout the country because of just the local codes and laws that allow us or make us to do these things. So.
Well, thank you both for that. And as we move through this conversation, I wanted to take an opportunity to try to ask a few questions about some of the earlier career inspirations and sort of what directed you on that career path and maybe how NC State ties into that. But, to kind of jump into it, you've mentioned both of your backgrounds in design and architecture, but what I'd love to know is what first sparked that, that interest or that passion, and how is it further shaped, if at all, by your time at NC State?
Yeah, I think the sort of just sparking an interest in architecture, for me, it was a combination of just kind of being one of those kids who love to draw and create, and being encouraged by especially my mother to kind of that was just what was something I always had at my disposal, just time to do that. And then it was also like, your parents kind of like can guide you in a way, like kind of, what are you going to do for your career? Like, and we were just a little bit of a family that talked about that and having a path. And my dad probably wanted me to be a lawyer, so I almost was like doubled down on architecture because I didn't want to do it. I just sort of defy that kind of way that you're guided and do something that was a little bit more, a challenge to me is to find a way in a creative field. And due to just moving around a lot before we ended up in North Carolina, came into contact with NC State. It was the option for us. I was in high school in Concord, North Carolina, and family's still there. And it ended up being an amazing in-state option for us and for me. And I think that it only just fueled it even more, the kind of creative spirit, the studio experience, especially the first year challenges of being a freshman in the fundamentals kind of curriculum. It sort of was very fast and packed and challenging, but I think that was something that, by that point I was sort of sold on doing something in architecture. So.
And I think my path, it's probably similar. They're all similar in some way. I think, um, I probably maybe figured it out a little bit later in late years in high school that there might be some kind of thing called architecture, and I knew about it, and I was doing the same art classes and much more of a creative. Graduated high school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went to UNC Greensboro actually for a year. Celebrated a good year of just regular old college. Didn't really do much, but I did take a class there, an art class, and one of the professors was like, "Hey, you think about architecture?" And I was like, "Yeah, I thought about it," but he's like, "You should think about it and maybe think about transferring to state." So I actually transferred in my sophomore year, which was really my freshman year at state, but sort of similar characteristics. I grew up in Virginia, but landed in North Carolina and then went to NC State as an undergrad. And so Kevin and I were freshmen at NC State together. But it was, I probably was learned a lot about sort of problem solving and thinking creatively about resolution of problems. And that's, I think, the part of that architecture is really kind of, brought to me, and it's something I think I always did growing up too, sort of the strategic part of thinking about how to resolve issues. And that's always something that's been fascinating. And then to be able to couple that with creativity is kind of a win-win for me personally. And I think to be able to now kind of do that with real buildings and real materials and things that are, incredible. It's pretty amazing to be able to drive around the city and see many projects that we've had our hand on and been able to kind of, take it through a process that we believe in is kind of making things better than they were before. So it's been pretty powerful, to be honest. Lucky.
No, I certainly appreciate the insight. I guess sort of off the beaten path, but both of you mentioned a passion for the arts or creative pursuits. And in your current careers, working in design and architecture, do you find that conflicts, that some of the creative aspects that are associated with art and some of the rigidity of design, sometimes come at odds? And are there ways that you've found to, evolve past that or use it to your advantage?
Well, I think that's thought a lot about that recently, and we're in a building here. Our building's kind of a hive of creative people. Some of them are just literally artist studios, and we've been in this building in the city of Boston here for about 12 years. And I was talking to an artist next door to us one day, and I was, kind of like, I guess, recognizing the sort of like job that we do, and then from a daily basis it starts to become a lot more problem solving. And yes, we're doing things, we're making buildings, and it felt like we would just gain inches every day. You wouldn't get the whole kind of like feeling that you would get in an 8-hour day of like creating a piece of artwork. But this artist was kind of talking about like creating art versus selling it for money. And the minute you sell a piece of artwork for money, it's commerce. It's not what you love to do. So I think art is what you love to do just for its own sake. It's a pure expression. Being an architect or doing design is commerce. It is you're performing a professional service for someone to solve a problem. And coming to grips with that means we're working with a lot of people every day to kind of like solve problems. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of emails. It's a lot of texts. It's a lot of, arguments in the job trailer with a contractor and these things that don't feel like artistic, but it's kind of up to every single person to satisfy that kind of creative itch in your life. But doing what we do is a commercial act, and that's where I think that starting a business that does such creative work has taken a lot of time for us to sort of like really try to distinguish between, you know, the expressiveness that everyone has as sort of being creative individuals and solving these problems in very efficient ways to make our clients happy and hire us for the next project. So a little bit of a roundabout answer to that, but I think that being in design school, you kind of take this sort of fast, kind of like full immersion experience of all the things, the color and the graphic design and landscape and all this. It's just really kind of like a drinking from a fire hose type of experience. But we really want to make sure that like the projects, the work that we do, we're in a model shop right now. So not many architecture firms, you know, have a model shop, but that's just something that we do to kind of like talk to each other and sort of, you know, form ideas and talk about them at a table. So we really are trying to equip everybody with the tools to be creative here and to feed all the other passions. But, yeah.
I mean, I think those three things are in conflict altogether all the time in terms of, you know, running a business, being creative and sort of delivering. I do think that one of the things that's made us successful is to ensure that we keep kind of the sort of eye on being creative. We have developed a process at Roadie that's we call it a concept-driven process, but that really sets forth a kind of a North Star for the project from a design standpoint, and we'll use that throughout the process through all those things that Kevin just talked about, the ups and downs, the pains, but we keep referring back to, is the concept still whole from the beginning to the end? And it's going to evolve, of course, because you know, building a building is super complex. There's so many factors, millions of decisions that go into it throughout the course of a project. But if we can keep an eye on sort of that guiding principle, it will, we believe, and we will always believe this, I think, you know, we will be able to deliver a product or a finished project that has creativity, has efficiency, and hopefully the client will call us back the next time, because that is the nature of running the business side of it. And we need to deliver a project. We're not theoretical architects from the standpoint of we just want to conceptualize something and just be happy with that. We can do that if someone wants to pay us to do that, but most of the time people pay us to actually build them a building that does what they need. Really a matter of how you do that and what's that process look like. And there's multiple ways you can do that, but we've picked ours and we're gonna stick with it. So see.
Oh, thank you for the insight. I know we have a lot of you know, engineering students, and I myself have a background in engineering, and there's a part of it that sometimes design can be a little bit rigid, and getting to find some of that balance, I think, is important for all of us.
Well, I think just on that, I mean, maybe the engineers, I'm not sure what kind of engineers they are, but you know, all of our projects have many more engineers on them than architects typically. And, I think the one thing is that we do talk about that idea of how to deliver a project through the lens of design, and you know, we do work with them and collaborate with them to make sure they understand what our goals are. Most of the time, the engineer is actually not part of the first chunk of the project, right? Where we're actually coming up with the design, the sort of conceptual design or the schematic design. We're doing that because we were trying to get maybe a project approved through the city or through a jurisdiction. Most of the time, they're not really the majority of engineers on that. So that's us working with the client, the jurisdiction, or wherever we're working to create the vision for the project. And so, you know, in some way we have an advantage because they're coming on later in the project, and yes, they can alter that to some degree, but we really try to make sure they're working with us to sort of get that sort of design delivered. And we do use a lot of the same engineers over and over again because we have created these working relationships that can acknowledge and understand that that's what we're going to do. And if they want to do that, well, we probably won't work with them on the next project. If they want to, work with us, and great.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really nice balance, actually, of that sort of process.
Yeah, and I appreciate just bringing up engineers. I think the word rigid is like, we can't be rigid as architects. We can't say, this is it, you just got to make it work. And that is like not a good way to start off a project. If Eric mentioned we have frequent engineer collaborators that we work with. That's not just because they all just do what we ask them to. They are the best ones that communicate with us early on about what's going to be important for them to solve this aspect of their project. Like structural engineers, we would not be here if it wasn't for them. So we have to respect the things that they do, and the amount of work that it takes to be an engineer is as kind of like daunting as being an architect. But everyone usually wants to have a successful outcome together, and it's really try to communicate really early on about all the different things, and especially when we mention sustainability and the importance of technology in that. Architects have to give a lot, in terms of just understanding what it takes to change the air temperature of a sealed envelope in a house, So I think that we really try to respect our peer professionals because we're kind of all on the same boat at the end of the day, trying to make, really good, innovative, projects that, are solving these complex problems.
No, thank you for that. We've spent some time talking about your backgrounds and your inspirations, but I was wondering if maybe both of you could provide some insight on what inspired you to start your firm. You've touched on it a little bit, but I think entrepreneurial work is a big undertaking for anyone, and for those of us that are interested in it or hoping to do it someday, your experiences would be very helpful. So I'd love to hear it.
I'll start a little bit. This probably anything's selfish, right? We started it for selfish reasons, and that's not a bad thing. I think that's a fine thing. You've heard our story. We've known each other a long time. Well, both Kevin and I ended up on the same street in one of the borough neighborhoods of Boston called Dorchester. So we're 2 doors down from each other. Both our wives are named Jennifer. There's a lot more to that story if you want to hear about it. But we moved into a part of Boston that frankly hadn't seen a lot of good development. It was lackluster in some of kind of the amenities and urban environment we believe should have, coffee shops, restaurants, whatever you need to sort of live in the city. And, I think what really kind of prompted us to start the firm was, I mentioned that we were at our place but we had to have what are we going to do here? And really the notion started to make our own neighborhood better. That's kind of what we really came out of the box with. And we didn't know what that really meant or how it would evolve, but it was really intended to figure out a way to use our skill set as designers to make our own community better. And so we really took that to heart. We learned about the approvals process for taking a project from nothing through the neighborhood process, which is very strong in Boston. And so we listened, we learned a lot about what communities cared about, what they wanted to hear about, what they didn't want to hear about. Boston is sort of still kind of in a pretty big boom, building boom that started back in 2009-ish, 10. And so a lot of the communities are tired of building and construction and happening in their neighborhood. And we really had sort of developed a kind of slightly different thought about how can the projects we do and work on make the communities that we're doing them in better. And so going back to our original idea, we wanted our neighborhood to be better. Well, we've quickly realized everybody wants their community to be better. That's a goal of living in a community. And so we harness that sort of power to be able to speak to what we're doing, how we're doing it. We used our skills as designers to diagram or present visual kind of understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it. We stopped and listened. We understood what people were asking and why they were asking it. And so using all those sort of different aspects of it to create this sort of idea of how we think about the work and talk about the work really formed how we still do the work. At the heart of every one of our projects, we talk about design, but we talk about how can this benefit the community it's going in or we're working on. And it could be a broader community, it could be the neighbors right next door. And so that is kind of critical thinking and strategy, as we talked about, on how to make sure a project can get approved and built. That's really the goal. But we also want to make sure people appreciate what we're doing and what we're trying to do. And we want the communities that we're working in to embrace the projects that we're delivering. We don't want people to be like, we hate that project and we can't believe it got built. We want them to embrace and understand why it's benefiting the community and what it's bringing to it. So that's really a lot of the basis of how we started in terms of creating our ethos about the firm and the projects and how we will think about them as we kind of move through our daily activities.
I think that it does have a lot to, I mean, in some ways it's like a Boston story, you know, the way that our process involves, and I heard this, but like the community meetings evolved out of the Salem witch trials, you know, kind of like it happened up here, and you can, you know, tell me if you've been presenting to a community of people who don't want a building someplace, you know why that where that evolved from. They really can be a little you know, put off by the idea of what is this happening. But I think that what Eric was trying to say is that this idea of selfishness, we actually saw an opportunity for us in the market. There weren't people doing really good design in our very neighborhood, and that may be just a simple like story about the neighborhood that we lived in and why that neighborhood was getting neglected by the city and all the prosperity that was going on all around it. But we felt like, number one, we actually are going to be able to put really good buildings in place for our neighbors. And actually, most of the neighbors are asking for these buildings. It's the people who go to the community meetings solely to have entertaining arguments with people who are applicants. So I think we try to just be ourselves in those situations. We're living here, we're raising our families in these communities, and we're trying to do our best work. So the other aspect of selfishness is not a bad word, really, is just the sort of push to create your own independence, your own financial independence. It takes a lot more than what we have time for on this phone call to do it, but you also kind of just need to step out and try it. And I think that having moving to a city that was way far away from where we met and being on suddenly in our careers at a point where we wanted to try something, it sort of tapped back into being a partner, you know, with a friend, and being in a kind of like a strange foreign land, and trying to make a go of it. So I think that you know, there are a lot of questions too in the chat here about you know, sort of blending the business side of things. We kind of had to learn a lot of those things on our own. And I know the Poole School of Management is part of this in a big way. There's a lot of things that you still need to learn once you kind of get out there. So the idea of getting out there and working and getting the very best possible job that you can right out of school or during school or whatever, you just kind of need to figure out what the workplace is like for you, what kinds of environments you like, and I think that both Eric and I had, work experiences in Virginia and North Carolina, and the firms are a little different. There's a little more freedom down there, and because we wanted to kind of give it a shot in a major city, we came up here and sort of like, who are you guys? and our accents had really worn off by then, so we, just needed to show up and do a good job, but the need to kind of just create as much experience in your own background is extremely important. No matter what class you are at school, just getting out there and seeing what environment works for you.
So Kevin, I think you've started positioning this more of a future focused side to this conversation, and we talked about certain attributes or things to keep in mind as you're moving through your career, but what are some skills or qualities that you're looking for in the next generation of designers or architects?
I mean, for us, for me, it's communication. The one piece that we really rely on is the ability to communicate, and that's among each other or to clients or whatever. And I think that it's so vitally crucial to being, in our minds, successful, or my mind successful, is the ability to communicate whatever it is, your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns, but it has to be done in a professional way, and a process that makes a lot of sense. And I think that I don't think it can be understated. We have problems on projects, and we have situations on projects, and we have a staff that's amazing, and we have almost 40 employees, and so a lot of what we do now, maybe less design work than we'd like and all the things, but it is about how to manage and sort of work your way through situations and sort of talk to a client. And we often we can only address situations that we know what they are, and we can't deal with things if we don't know what the problem is or whatever this. And that's the same for our staff. And so we talk about recognition and listening and hearing what the client's saying or what they're talking about, and understanding. You might not know how to respond to that. That's okay. That's why we're here. But we need everybody to be thinking and listening and communicating, to ensure that we're managing sort of the process. And it's especially important for us because a large percentage of our work, I'll say 90, I don't know if it is 85, is referral or repeat business. So, and for us, that's crucial. So, if we can do a good job on a project, obviously we hope they come back, but almost as important is they tell somebody else, hey, give Kevin and Eric a call. They're just good guys to work with. They listen, they do what they say they're going to do, and the rest doesn't work itself out, but the rest comes along. And so I think for me, communication is top, no question.
Yeah, I think that you're also kind of maybe trying to provide some information for students here who are going to be doing this in the future. And I second that with respect to Eric, what Eric said. I think we call it being a regular person, just answer the call, show up to the interview on time, and just be genuinely interested in learning about it. Being yourself is also really important. If it doesn't feel natural, it's probably not a good fit at the end of the day. But we really respect getting to know people. We're open to different styles of communication, but we just want to make sure that we really understand who our candidates are that we're looking at, and because chemistry is very important in the kind of environment that we do. We're fully in person office. We have a couple remote employees, but generally we work in the office here, and we kind of thrive off of each other's energy. And so we look for people who align with that kind of that want that, and that's been a tough thing to kind of navigate over the last 6 years. But I think that we're here today in our model shop, and the place where it's usually filled with people making noise and dust and all that. So,
and I think sort of building on that a little bit, going into like getting a job and all those things, which are obviously critical for everybody at school. For us, hiring looks maybe a little different. I mean, we do spend a lot of time on the hiring process. We don't hire for project specific. We actually hire to find people that will fit our culture at the office. We believe we can almost teach any skills. Skills are things you can be taught how to do. We have a way of doing that at Rhody that we do think about and want to. And so I think for us, we definitely are looking for people that we think can work in our culture and sort of like our professional culture and understand that we're all here to learn. Kevin and I are still trying to learn. We're the leaders of the firm, but for us, we want to come in every day and learn something from the juniorest person who's here or an intern we have. And that's cool. And that's awesome. And so I think that's going back to this notion of being collaborative and communicative in the office and together. So that's something that's really important for us as a firm, and how to sort of work on a daily basis, because not every day is great, in all honesty, and it's very complex in the things we do. And to be able to kind of, own those things and sort of be able to talk about those things and communicate those things is actually super critical to being successful, at least at Rhody. So.
Oh, and thank you both for your answer there. I think it's always important, especially for conversations like these, to just lay out expectations for new employees, or for more career-oriented conversations, to just help tailor some skills for students and future employees. But I think I've taken up enough of your time with my questions, and I'd like to open the floor to some of our guests. So whoever would like to just either shout it out or throw it into the chat, we'll open it up for some just general Q&A. So whoever would like to go first.
I mean, there's a couple things in the chat. I see one from Gardner. Do you think starting your own business is better path than working under somebody else? Yeah, of course. No, it offers different opportunities, but Kevin and I both have had many architectural jobs, and we both actually, when we were at NC State, we did they were called co-op at that time. We did co-ops between our kind of junior and senior year, a little bit varied, but where I went and worked for a year in Richmond, Virginia. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I was sort of seeking a way for me to kind of put the professional world and the college world together and understand how it would work. And I took a full year off of school and worked in a different city and sort of learned so much about like the sort of dynamics of professional environment and the school environment and sort of how that comes together. And so, and then we came to Boston. We worked both for 10 plus years in Boston at different firms, but we gathered knowledge on how to, work in an environment and build an environment. And I often say we learned as much how we don't want to run a business at those previous firms to how we want to run a business at those firms. And, so I think now we couldn't probably look back and maybe we'll work for somebody at some point, but we needed to work at those other places to learn the sort of profession. And then we were able to take that into being a business owner and being an entrepreneur and being our own bosses. But I don't think I would have made it if I would have tried to start a business right out of school, because there's just so much complexity to what we do and how we do it. So
and I, that question was from an engineer, so I think we know a little less about that, but I would have to think, just judging by the severity of accidents that could happen with that, learning under a professional. We're architects and engineers are both in the same sense. Like you need to pass exams, you have to apprentice. Those are just things you got to get through. You got to get the credits. You got to. I was encouraged by the dean at NC State at that time. Get started. Start getting your hours of credit, because if you can count some of them for school to be able to accelerate your years ahead to take exams to become an architect or an engineer. Once you kind of achieve that, then you have a standing within the profession. So I think that there is some of those basics that you need to do, like Eric said, just starting right out on your own. You wouldn't be able to be licensed. It's not that a license lets you do everything, but it's sort of like, again, it's one of those elements of standing. So you kind of have to pick a person to apprentice under, person or persons, and some of those choices will shape you for quite a long time. Either like, I don't want to be like that person, or that's the kind of person I want to be. So I think that just being in these business professional environments and seeing how folks handle themselves is a process that you'll all go through.
What has been your biggest takeaway in or related to the architecture field?
The biggest one. Thank you, Lara. I would say you better love what you are getting into. I think that it's biggest takeaway is there really is no greater experience than walking into a space that you work many years on, seeing come to fruition, coming out in a way that you intended it to. They can seem like miracles sometimes, but I think that the need to sort of just have an inner determination to what it is to become an architect. I think it's probably the same thing for engineers as well. It just needs a lot of determination to make it.
Yeah, and I think, like I mentioned earlier, not every day is great. And I think there is this sort of notion to remain optimistic and aspirational. I think that you really do need to believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing is right. And that's not always an easy thing to do. There's no question about it. But I think if you can believe in yourself and believe what you're saying or doing is the right answer, you might be wrong. That's okay. That's us learning. But if you believe in it and sort of can understand it and speak to it or sort of demonstrate it or whatever it is, that's, to me, you have it in your core, and like Kevin's saying, you got to stick to it and believe in it. I think it's really an important aspect for architecture, but also engineering, or just being a business and business owner, because they're all going to have sort of these kind of different aspects and pressures on them. But if you can keep your eye on the horizon and keep pushing forward, you'll do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I do too. John, if you have a question.
I know some people are worried that like AI might replace parts of the design process. So I was wondering, like, how do you guys think the profession can adapt while, like, maintaining human-centered design?
Hmm. It's a great question. I'm still trying to figure out how you got into our shop, but I have an idea or two.
Yeah. I mean, I think as architects, we have a million, well, not a million, that's all. We have a ton of different tools that we use. We use models, we use computers, we use our brains, we use all these different aspects. And, you know, I think AI is just another tool. And, I think it's about using it in a way that, again, we use it. I mean, we use it all the time for different things. And, it might be about sort of finding some aspect of something, doing research. I use it to help me write because I'm not a great writer. And so use it to make sure, like, I'm not total buffoon in something I just wrote. And maybe everybody knows it's AI already a little bit, but it's okay to use these tools as long as you're sort of pushing forward your kind of your mission or whatever you're trying to achieve. And I just think it's another tool. We'll see. Maybe I'll be wrong. Next Thursday, we might be all out of a business, and that's fine. We tried, but I think we need to harness the power of it. It's coming. It's here already. We know it. It's all here, and but we can use it to sort of make our whatever we're doing better and more thoughtful. So,
well, I mean, you mentioned it, John, as human centered. We're no matter where AI takes the profession, we're creating spaces for humans, and I think that what we're really proud of it seems maybe it's just like a rallying cry for the College of Design, but like when you build models and you sit around and talk about them and you're with people in a setting like this, that those experiences don't lie. They're kind of like you understand proportions. We sort of like we're very proud of the fact that that sort of fundamentals program teaches you about how space is created, what goes into a volume, and you want to always be aware that like a human designed this space that you're in. It's a certain height because of a reason, and there's certain things that AI just will not be able to replicate, I think. And that comes after, seeing a lot of things that are out there that you just don't know how to comprehend these buildings sometimes because they kind of let the program run amok. And you can see there's a lot of cut and pasting in design and places where it's really fast and easy to build. But if you kind of just slow the design process down, use the tools as much as possible, generating options, what are the possibilities on this site, use the tools in the best way possible to speed up the very time-consuming things that you do so that you can get back to what we do best, which is just like understand what the human impact is on the work that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think on our website we say actual intelligence or something instead of AI, and I think we're not scared of it. I mean, and I think that Kevin's right. I mean, I think architecture is evokes feelings and emotions, and AI hasn't quite figured that out yet for its own. I mean, it might be able to replicate things, but I think we got some time ahead of us to sort of create still. So don't let it.
Didn't ChatGPT cry when you wrote to it?
It might have cried a little bit.
No one got that.
Oh, I think.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
And I think we have some questions in the chat. I think the first one at the top is from Melissa. Given the importance of designers and engineers collaborating in practice, what advice would you give to students for developing these collaboration skills now within their current programs, through projects, critiques, or other experiences?
I mean, when you're at NC State for 4 or 5 years, depending on the program, you just have, you're going to make friends with those in the engineering school or the business school. You're going to take classes that kind of mix the programs. Get to know these people, and what's sort of driving them. What sort of why do they select their discipline path? Because when you go off into places and you're probably going to follow your professional group and create a cohort of engineers or architects and all that, you won't have the time that you have available to you now, which is just like getting into a research project. It's a research institution. Find some professors or anyone who is trying to blend the disciplines together, and I think you'll start to kind of get inspired by working with really smart people who just have a different set of skills, and it's as important for the engineers to work with designers who come from an extreme creative side as it is for designers to really work with people who are truly analytical in how they think and approach things. So I think there's a lot that you can do to engineer your own experience especially in the later years in your curriculums. It should allow for a little bit of that flexibility. I did a door with that dean who was into concrete. We worked with the civil engineering department to come up with new ways to reinforce concrete, and it was just such a fun thing to be involved in.
I think we got two gardeners. So I think as business owners, are you looking to expand the company into other cities, et cetera? I think for us, the answer is yeah. And I think what we built Rhody out of the city of Boston. There's no doubt about it. And we learned a lot about how we work and what we do. But now the same idea about community-based design and thinking about we're now doing, work all over New England, and it's expanding naturally because I think the message resonates with our clients and who we're talking to. And, I think as entrepreneurs and, wanting to run good businesses, we are actively working and looking in other regions or cities. Kevin's pushing hard on actually North Carolina. And, I think it's something that gives us the ability to work in new environments. So we're learning. And I mentioned we're always trying to learn ourselves, thinking about, those environments, what's different about them. What can we bring as our craft to that sort of region or city or whatever it is. Those are things that we actually really enjoy and enjoy the conversation of design in other kind of places. And, before Rhody, Kevin and I were doing work all over the country. And so it's not something that's foreign to us. And, we've done it before. It's just a matter of, you need to build, at least for us, we need to build a kind of a body of work and a reputation that can now carry us out of the city that we're kind of based in. And we're seeing that now happening more and more, which is really exciting and a great new opportunity for us. So yeah, we're always looking to push and out of the city. So.
The last question I see on this screen is, would you say that hands-on experiences, internships, volunteering clubs, et cetera, are a good way to develop yourself further in your own career? Yes, absolutely. Internships, that's probably more of an obvious path. If you can do all of those things, internships, volunteering, and clubs, I mean, that's like gonna, be a whole club sandwich right there. It's all sorts of different ways that you can just understand what these environments are like, just how people are, how they manage people. Even if it's a volunteer thing where you're not getting paid, you're told to do something for a couple hours and just see how motivated people are by what they're doing through the instructions they're given. And, there's that's a way of future management skills of your own. And even having, peer clubs is, problem solving with people, like you're all going to tackle one section of something, and you're going to learn who really works hard, and what it means to have someone who doesn't work hard on a project, and how it kind of like breaks down in a manner. But those are all experiences to sort of find for yourself.
Yeah.
It's really in your own hands.
Well, and I think the way that you wrote the question is perfect. So much of those experiences, figuring out how you work and how you want to work in the environment that you want to work in. And yes, you're going to learn through hearing from others, but I think what Kevin said, figure out what you love and you want to do, and through those kind of experiences, you'll figure it out. I mean, I think we can take 10 architecture firms in the city of Boston, and they all have 10 different ways of doing everything that they do. And so, finding the ways that you want to do things, and sort of work towards your strengths, and, and how you can be productive in your personal career, I think is paramount in your early opportunities in the working environment. And I feel like, I was lucky that I did do that. And the co-op or internship I did in Richmond, I actually went back. They hired me back after I graduated. I worked for another 2.5 years there. And then I went to grad school. And I went to grad school with a different perspective. I understood the profession. I had a different work ethic. Kevin and I used to spend days on end in studio, and we were bleary-eyed and pulling all-nighters all the time. And I learned there's a different way to do it, and there's a different work balance and life balance that you can achieve in a professional environment. And I took that to grad school, and it sort of like was a different way to think and work. And so I learned a lot about how I needed to work and what I needed to do. So I think so much of those early opportunities is figuring out what you can do, and what you want to figure out for your long future. And my son just graduated from Wentworth. He was at college up in Boston, and he's currently looking for a job. And one of the things he asked me is like, "What should I be looking for?" And I was like, "Doesn't matter. Just get a job, and you'll figure out what you're looking for when you get there, and you'll learn what is important to you when you're there. And it won't be your forever job probably, and it won't be this. Take away the benefits and the positives of it, and take that to your next opportunity." And I think so everybody is so different these days, and we're not cookie cutters, and we're not we all have our own kind of a personal kind of bent on how we think and do things. So I think you can just learn so much about yourself in those early careers and early opportunities, that just take them. You're going to figure it out later, and you'll be better off for it in the long run.
Well, thank you everyone for your questions and for your participation in this event. And I see now we're kind of getting over time. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us. Kevin, Eric, thank you both for your time, and look forward to hearing more about future endeavors and future projects.
Sounds awesome.
We'll see you in the spring.
Yeah. Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity, and appreciate everybody spending an hour with us. It actually is. It's really nice to see. And Kevin and I do have extreme fond memories of being in Raleigh, and NC State's an amazing place to be at school. And I think so much of what we took away from that is the people that we met. And it's really, that's a true statement. And so enjoy your days there, and take it with you when you go. Maybe you'll come back and tell everybody about how great you're doing. So
it's a different place as well, and we were there, and it's an even better place. So it's really proud of what we see developing in Raleigh. So good luck to everybody for all your pursuits.